Hey, this is Mike Matthews from muscleforlife.com, and in this short video I want to talk about bulking and cutting and some of the common mistakes that people make, which then leads them to think that it doesn't work or that it's a very inefficient way of going about your, the nutritional or dietary side of building a physique. And this then leads to, like right now, it's kind of trendy to chase this idea of lean gains. And I don't necessarily mean that in terms of like Martin Burkhan's lean gains program, which is definitely it's a good intermittent fasting type of if you want to do intermittent fasting, then I recommend the lean gains approach. But what I'm talking about is like chasing this recomp idea, where I get emailed by quite a few people every I don't know, probably about 20 a week or so that say basically they don't really want to have to get fatter, they just want to build muscle and stay lean, or even get leaner. And it's possible to build muscle and lose fat at the same time. It's mainly just a newbie gains thing. If you're new to weightlifting, or if you're new to proper weightlifting, if you've never really emphasized heavy compound lifting before and you have a fair amount of body fat, if you're 15% body fat or over, and this is a guy, those stats would be for a guy, and you've up until now you've just been doing a lot of high rep isolation type bodybuilding type magazine workouts and stuff. If you then switch to a proper diet, put yourself in a calorie deficit, and then emphasize heavy compound weightlifting every day, like that's the emphasis of your workout, then chances are you will build some muscle while you lose fat. But there's no magical thing that's really going on other than newbie gains are real. And but if you are an experienced weightlifter and you've been emphasizing heavy compound lifting for I'd say probably at least a year or so, your newbie gains are long, they're done, and you're really not going to be able to build muscle when you're in a calorie deficit. But that's really the subject of another video. What I want to talk about here is bulking and cutting. So bulking is simply where you put your body into a calorie surplus. Really, you're looking to be in a surplus every day, at least on your training days. And then cutting is where you are putting yourself into a calorie deficit to reduce body fat. So as I said, it's kind of trendy right now to be contrarian and say that, oh, well, that's just the old style of doing things, and this new style, this recomp style, lets you, regardless of your training experience and regardless of your individual circumstances, you can just, build muscle and get leaner, or build muscle and stay lean. And as I said, building muscle while getting leaner, that's really just for newbies. Building muscle while maintaining a low body fat percentage, I would say, me personally, I've been able to maintain about 8 or 9% and make slow gains in the gym. I've been weightlifting now for 11 years, but my first 7 years were a joke. I had no idea what I was doing. I never trained legs. I actually, legitimately, I don't think I performed a single set of deadlift in my first 7 years. Which is terrible. So I've really only been properly weight training for about 4 years now, and my body has changed quite a bit. I'll link an article here. Let me just open up a notepad. I'm going to link an article that will kind of show my progression from when I finally started to learn how to do it right and to where I'm at now. So here's the thing with bulking and cutting. First, there are the laws of energy balance, and this is what regulates muscle growth and fat loss. So when you are wanting to focus on building muscle, you want to have your body in an energy surplus. As I said, at least on your training days. But what you definitely do not want to be in is a negative energy balance. You do not want to be in a calorie deficit. And the reason why is because research has shown that when the body's in an energy surplus, when it has a bit more energy than it's burning and than it needs, and of course macronutrient ratios do apply here. If you're eating no protein, you're not going to build muscle, or very little protein, you're not going to build muscle efficiently. But we'll just stick to the energy balance here, just in terms of calories, just pure energy. When your body's in a slight surplus, its ability to synthesize proteins is maximized. When it's in a deficit, when you are feeding it a bit less energy than it's burning to induce, fat loss over time, its ability to synthesize proteins is impaired. So what you're looking at basically is when you're cutting, your body's ability to build its muscles back up after you're breaking them down in the gym is just impaired, and that's why it's hard to build muscle while you're cutting. When you're bulking, however, when you are in a slight surplus, then your body's ability to synthesize proteins is at its peak, basically, and that's why it maximizes muscle growth. So that isn't really argued. That pretty much everybody knows that. Where the controversy is like the fat gain that comes with bulking, and the big mistakes, and this is really like, it just boils down to these common mistakes that people make. So if you just Google bulking diet or something like that, and you kind of, come across whatever you come across, chances are you're going to be told to eat an obscene amount of calories. Like you're going to be starting at 4,000 calories a day or something like that. And to put that in perspective, I weigh 188 right now. I'm about 7% body fat. And I would bulk on probably 3,300 calories a day, maybe 35. That would be my max. And that's me. And my BMR is high. I lift weights 5 days a week, some days 6 days a week. Not when I'm cutting, but when I'm maintaining, I'll do 6 days a week. I'm doing cardio, anywhere from 2 to 4 days a week, depending on what I'm doing with my diet and with my body. So I'm very active. I burn a lot of energy, and that's me. So when a guy that's 170 pounds, let's say he's just starting out, he's new to weightlifting or whatever, and he starts on 4,000 calories a day, that's so much more energy than the body needs. That's, you're not. It's not a simple matter of, well, if a slight surplus is good for protein synthesis, then a huge surplus must be really good. It's diminishing returns. You just want to be in a slight surplus. And by that, I mean probably about a 10% surplus is a good place to shoot for, where that means that if your body right now, its maximum burn or whatever is about, 2,500 calories a day, you want to be somewhere around 2,800 a day or even a little bit less than that is a good place to start. Just enough of that surplus to maximize protein synthesis rates without piling on body fat. And that's where guys really go wrong with bulking, is they just grossly overeat. And with that comes very rapid fat storage. And as you get fatter, there are changes that occur in your body that actually get in the way of muscle growth. A big one is insulin sensitivity. As you get fatter, insulin sensitivity goes down. And it goes down in muscles too, not just in fat cells, but muscle cells become more resistant to insulin, which means they don't accept nutrients as readily, right? And as that gets worse and worse, that affects protein synthesis rates. That's why bodybuilders, they inject insulin. So they're on anabolic steroids that dramatically increase protein synthesis rates, and they're on other drugs as well that don't. All the big drugs that guys take, most of the popular drugs or whatever, they just dramatically increase protein synthesis rates in different ways, but either by increasing hormones like testosterone, or like in the case of trenbolone, I believe it increases like the nitrogen uptake in muscle cells. I don't quite remember. I'm not like a big drug guy. I read about things here and there. So anyways, when you're on these drugs, your body's ability to synthesize proteins is dramatically increased, and so then that's why bodybuilders, they eat a ton of protein usually, because the body can actually use it, upwards of like 2 grams per pound, and then they're shooting insulin with every meal as well, because that drives even more nutrients into the muscle cells, which are then able to use that protein to build themselves up even faster and faster. So as a natural weightlifter, what you can just know from that is, as your body becomes more resistant to insulin, its ability to build the muscle cells' ability to build themselves up also becomes impaired. So what happens with the average kind of bulk is, a guy goes, all right, I'm on a bulk now, it's time to eat, let's go. Like, pounding food every day, massive cheat meals, very high fat meals, which just, dietary fat is converted to body fat very efficiently. It's not that it's bad, you need dietary fat, but it doesn't, a high carb diet is much better for weightlifting purposes than a high fat diet. And I talk about that in other articles. I'll probably shoot a video on that. That'd be a separate thing. So that's the bulking mistake, is gain body fat too quickly. If you're gaining more than a pound a week, and you're not just brand new, this isn't your first 3 weeks of weightlifting, then you're just gaining too much fat. Your body, think about it, like when we're talking about synthesizing proteins, a pound of muscle, think of a 16-ounce steak. Like, that's a lot of meat. That's a pound of muscle. Your body has to build that. That takes time. So if you are gaining, like let's say your first year of weightlifting, if you gain on average over that first year a half a pound of muscle a week, you've done very, very well. If you put on 25 pounds of muscle year one, that's like you have good genetics and you did everything right. You stuck to your diet. You didn't make these bulking and cutting mistakes. You pushed yourself hard in your training. You didn't miss days that if you could help it and stuff like that. So If you're gaining more than a pound a week on a bulk, you're probably just gaining too much fat. And in terms of ratios, I haven't seen any research on it, but anecdotally speaking, it seems to be that if you're gaining a pound a week or a little bit less than that, if half of that is muscle and half of that is fat, you're doing pretty well. If you're gaining more muscle than fat, you're doing really well. If you're gaining more fat than muscle, you're doing something wrong. So what happens now is, let's say a guy, he starts at 10% body fat, and he's gonna bulk until 16% or so, which is about 15-16% is where I recommend you cut it off, because then you're gonna start running into insulin sensitivity issues, and you're not gonna feel very good. And it just kind of gets worse from that point on. You're better off stopping at 15-16%, getting back down to 10%, and then repeating. So the bulking mistake is pound food and go from 10% to 15% in 2 months or less, right? So then you haven't had that much time to, with these maximum protein synthesis rates, it still takes time to build that steak, and you haven't given your body that much time. It's only been 6 weeks, 8 weeks or so. And now your body it's kind of like, now you had this nice, everything is kind of moving like this, and now you're coming over that hump, and now it's just going to get harder and harder to build muscle, and you're just going to get fatter and fatter from this point on. So then, let's say a guy knows that though, and he goes, well shit, all right, I guess I have to cut now. So I built this little bit of muscle in 8 weeks, and I ate too much food, put on too much fat, now I have to go cut. Then there are 2 common mistakes made here. First is to utilize a large calorie deficit and a lot of cardio, which burns up any of the muscle that was just built, right? So it's like, I'll put myself in 1,000 calorie daily, 1,000 calorie deficit every day, and I'm gonna do cardio 6 days a week, and I'm gonna lift weights, whatever, 5 to 6 days a week. No, you can't do that as a natural weightlifter. When you see guys that do that, when they just say, yeah, I just go on 1,000 calorie deficit, and I eat no carbs, and my training's pretty good, I don't lose muscle. Yeah, you know what that means. It's like, how many grams of drugs are you on a week, please? Because that's the only way you can do that. As a natural weightlifter, you have to be in a moderate deficit. I like 15-20% max. I like to lift 5 days a week when I cut. I lift heavy. I don't just accept. I'm trying to maintain my strength. For the first 2 weeks, I'm still trying to actually make strength gains. My strength does plateau though when I cut at about week 3 to 4 is when my lifts just kind of stick. And I'm fine with that. It's not fun. I like to go to the gym and push myself and make progress, but that's the nature of cutting. So I'm just trying to maintain my strength and thereby maintain my muscle and get rid of the body fat. So that's the key to cutting, is you want to minimize muscle loss. You get rid of the fat, but you keep almost all the muscle that you built during your bulk. So ideally then, I'll say that's the first mistake, is trying to rush the cut, losing your muscle. The other mistake is dragging the cut out, where you use too small of a deficit, like a 5% deficit, and you drag this cut out for, let's say 4 months. What should have taken 2 months is 4 months. Well, now you've essentially wasted 2 months being in a slight deficit, which means that protein synthesis rates are impaired. You're probably not building muscle during that time. You're just losing a little bit of fat every week when you could have sped it up. You could have lost fat faster, because you want to get, when you're in the beginning phases of building a physique, you want to put on as much mass as quickly as possible. And to do that, you want to spend as much time in an energy surplus as possible. You want to spend as much time with your protein synthesis rates maximized as possible. And you do that by being moderate in your bulks. Don't go into crazy surpluses. Don't think now you have license to eat whatever you want, and your cheat meals are these 4,000 calorie blowouts on top of the 3,000 calories you already ate earlier in the day. Don't do that. It's counterproductive. Follow a meal plan when you're on a bulk. Just like how you do on a cut, you just get to eat more food. But stick to your foods. Be within 100 calories of your target every day. Enjoy yourself, eat foods you like, but don't go crazy with it. Keep your cheats moderate. I also recommend, if you're going to be cheating on a bulk, that you save up calories for that, meaning that maybe you only really eat protein throughout the day if you're going to have a big dinner. So you come into dinner going, all right, cool, I have 300 carbs and 80 fat that I can eat in this meal just to hit my daily targets. And then so you can enjoy yourself at the restaurant without, going 2,500 calories over your normal daily intake, which is already a surplus intake. So you do that so you can maximize your bulks. You want to drag those bulks. You want to, if you're going from 10 to 15% in your bulk, it really depends on the person. It's hard to say, but if you can make that take 6 months, that's really good. Meaning if you can just stay in a slight surplus, you get a little bit fatter, each month, but it's not anything dramatic. You're gaining maybe about 1% body fat per month, 6 months muscle building time, and then from your cut, you do everything right to keep that at about 2 months, you get back to 10%. If you do it that way, you will not lose really any of the muscle that you've built in that 6 months. If you do lose any, it'll be a very small amount. So that's the correct way to bulk and cut. That works. And that is really the only way to do it. Going for a recomp right in the beginning, getting stuck in that chasing the recomp is very counterproductive in the long run, because the best you can hope for is kind of like where you can do it a couple different ways, but basically your weekly calorie intake comes out to be a wash at a maintenance level. You can make gains like that. They're just not as fast as, bulking and cutting. So you look at it, your first year or two is like, you get fatter and you go, God, I look bad. And then you cut down and you're like, ooh, I'm looking a little bit better. You get fatter and you're like, and you're like, I look so bad. And then you cut back down and then you even look a little bit better. And you do that for the first year or so, year and a half, that's what you do. But then at the end of that, now what you're left with is a good amount of muscle. You're left with enough muscle to where you can sit at 10% and be like, wow, I actually look pretty good. And then comes the next phase, which is how do you build enough muscle and build the physique so you can sit at 7% and look good. But that's another video. So yeah, I hope this video helps you with your bulks and cuts. If you do it that way, that it works, and it's the most efficient way to build a physique. Yes, you have to deal with getting fatter. You don't always look great. That's just the way it is. But if you keep your eye on the prize, a little bit down the line, then you're going to really have a physique to work with, and really start how you have that foundation that you can turn into something great. All right, see you in the next video.